Certainly. Here's a complete, 10,000-character English article based on your provided ideas from General Hospital, rewritten in a new and dramatically enhanced narrative structure. The plot is presented with high emotional tension, layered character motivations, and an immersive tone. Dark currents rise in Port Charles. Lucas breaks, Drew takes command, and Anna turns up the heat. In the shadow-drenched corners of Port Charles, a storm of secrets brews beneath every seemingly quiet exchange. For months, the undercurrents of betrayal, buried trauma, and competing agendas have simmered just below the surface. But now, with loyalties fraying and danger closing in, the tension explodes into a nightmarish chain of events, starting with Lucas Jones. Lucas had always tried to hold himself together. The kind of man who believed in order, in facts, in decency. But there was no peace to be found when the truth clawed at his conscience. Something had shifted inside him ever since that night at the pier, the one he told no one about. And when a quiet, innocuous package arrived at his doorstep that morning, he couldn't breathe. His hands trembled as he tore it open, revealing a single flash drive and a printed photo. A surveillance still of someone who looked unmistakably like Lucas, standing over a bloodied figure near the docks. He didn't need to watch the video to know what it contained. He had buried the memory, convinced himself it was a hallucination, a trauma-induced mirage. But the evidence was there now, real, damning, and waiting to explode. His mind spun. Who sent it? Why now? Lucas's carefully composed persona shattered under the weight of fear. In a moment of panic, he bolted from his apartment, sweat pouring down his temples, heart jackhammering in his chest. He needed help, but he couldn't trust anyone. Not yet. Meanwhile, Drew Kane had been preparing for something he hoped would never come, full-on chaos. But he had seen the signs. He had been tracking encrypted messages, subtle shifts in alliances, and the eerie silence surrounding certain high-profile players in town. As far as Drew was concerned, a war was already underway, one that involved not only mob ties and law enforcement but something more insidious: betrayal from within. And he had no intention of being caught off guard. So he made a calculated move. In a closed-door meeting at a secure property just outside Port Charles, Drew outlined his contingency plan. Several trusted allies had gathered, including a few ex-WSB operatives and one particularly skilled hacker known only as Cicada. Drew laid out what he believed was unfolding: a covert scheme involving evidence manipulation, witness coercion, and a hidden agenda targeting high-value assets, including himself. His warning was sharp: if they come for one of us, they'll come for all of us. The moment one domino falls, the others aren't far behind. But it wasn't just about protecting reputations. Drew suspected someone close to them was feeding information to the wrong side, someone who had access, history, and motives buried deep under layers of feigned loyalty. And he intended to find out who it was before it was too late. Back in Port Charles, Anna Devane had grown weary of being stonewalled. Her instincts, sharp as ever, were screaming at her that something was terribly wrong. Marco Rios's disappearance was no longer a cold case, it was an open wound that refused to clot. His last known location, Anna discovered, intersected suspiciously with Carly Spencer's timeline. The same Carly who insisted she knew nothing, who had suddenly gone radio silent about her recent dealings with Sonny, and who had repeatedly deflected questions with emotional appeals. Anna wasn't buying it. She paid Carly a visit under the guise of a friendly drop-in, but her tone was anything but casual. She didn't need a badge to interrogate anymore, she only needed the truth. And Carly, confronted with a flurry of pointed questions about where she was the night Marco vanished, felt the pressure mounting. "Were you with Sonny that night? Did you know about Marco's arrangement with Sidwell? Why was your car spotted within 5 blocks of the location the same night Marco disappeared?" Anna's voice remained calm, but the intensity in her eyes betrayed her resolve. Carly deflected as best she could, but Anna had seen it before: the slight pause before an answer, the involuntary glance downward, the defensive posture. It didn't prove guilt, but it proved fear. And that was enough to dig deeper. On the other side of the city, a different battle was taking shape. Curtis Ashford, recovering from both physical and emotional trauma, had been trying to re-establish himself at the Savoy. But he knew something was wrong with the way Stella Henry had been acting. The woman who had once championed truth and integrity now seemed evasive, especially whenever Curtis mentioned a new investigation he was assisting Anna with. At first, he thought it was worry. Stella had always been protective. But when she actively discouraged him from working with the PCPD and urged him to stay out of things he didn't understand, Curtis became suspicious. Curtis had always seen Stella as a mentor, a guiding light. But her cryptic warnings and subtle resistance started feeling less like care and more like obstruction. One night, after she hastily deleted a text message he glimpsed over her shoulder, he knew. She was hiding something. And if she was protecting someone, it wasn't him. Curtis confronted her, but Stella stonewalled him with gentle, rehearsed lines about letting the past go, and choosing your battles. But Curtis was no longer a passive participant in his life. He wanted answers. He deserved them. And Stella's reluctance only pushed him further into Anna's camp, despite the danger. As these parallel events collided, the pulse of Port Charles quickened. Lucas's panic spiraled into full-blown collapse when Drew's contact Cicada tracked the origin of the surveillance package to a drop site affiliated with the remnants of a WSB rogue cell, one that had supposedly been dismantled years ago. The footage had been doctored. The bloodied figure in the video wasn't dead. But the message was clear: someone wanted Lucas to believe he was responsible. And that someone had access to his psychological profile, his past trauma, and the very night Lucas thought he'd lost everything. Drew, piecing the puzzle together, began to realize the stakes were far higher than anticipated. Whoever orchestrated this campaign wasn't just targeting individuals, they were destabilizing trust, turning allies against each other, and manipulating fragile relationships to pave the way for something bigger. Anna, with Carly still under suspicion, turned her attention to the old WSB archives, revisiting her own troubled past to find the names that had once operated in the shadows. Some were presumed dead. Some vanished. And a few might be back under new identities. Meanwhile, Curtis took a dangerous step, hacking into Stella's encrypted files, uncovering an old report she had buried involving a child, a sealed adoption, and a classified operation in Marseille that connected back to both Drew and Lucas. The revelation stunned him. If what he found was true, then Stella had been part of a WSB cover-up decades ago, one that cost lives and left deep scars, possibly explaining why she was so desperate to keep him away from Anna's investigation. By week's end, the dominoes had begun to fall. Lucas disappeared without warning. Drew received a direct threat laced with a code only he would understand. Carly, unable to sleep, found herself haunted by voices from her past and started questioning whether she knew Sonny as well as she believed. And Stella received an anonymous message: "They're opening doors you swore would stay shut. The equilibrium of Port Charles is breaking. The truth is coming, but whether it brings salvation or destruction remains to be seen." Let me know if you'd like this article translated into Vietnamese or continued in a new installment.